Roll call.
I was gonna call it to order. All right, calling the Portland Parks and Recreation Board meeting to order. We can have a roll call, please.
Dr. Corbin,
Here.
Allie,
Here.
Casey,
Here.
David,
Who's that?
Chris, Adam, Adrian, Aaron,
Here.
Sabrina, Sue-Ann, here. Matt,
Here.
Patty, here. Bill,
Here.
Allison, here. Samir. And Jessica.
Here.
Thank you so much, Director Long. If we can go ahead and start public comments. If you are here for public comment and are online, please raise your hand so we can call on you.
Yes, I have Kim who is ready to speak.
Wonderful. Kim, just as a reminder, if you don't know, make sure you keep your personal information to yourself, so don't give out your phone number or email address, and you have 2 minutes to speak. Just to test the audio, are you able to hear us and are you able to talk at this time?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you all hear me from your end?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect. Okay, and I have 2 minutes. Go ahead and get started.
thanks. I have two comments, so I'll make it fast. I wanted to bring to the board concerns about the Park Lane Park project in development. My first comment would be about the lack of trees planted thus far with the park opening this winter. I have emails with the public liaison from the Parks Department from last winter regarding those trees. They said that there was going to be some experimental trees being planted this spring. And so far, there's still no trees. I'm concerned with the park opening in this winter. I think it's supposed to open in December. Just the lack of tree cover. And with this project being in East Portland, District 1, I think it's really important to prioritize trees. So that's my first comment. My second comment is a little bit more general to the some of the dirt work that they've been doing in the development. I had emails from 2021 where the project manager said they wouldn't be changing the grade or elevation on the north side of the development within 70 feet of the fences that are up against private property. And they ended up having twice as much excess dirt and stockpile left over. So what they did is they put it's like an 8 to 9 foot berm within 15 feet of the private property line, which for one, it just invades the privacy of all the neighbors. And for two, I think it ends up it could become a nuisance when the park opens up, because there's going to be this hidden ditch out away from the light between the berm and the private property. And those are my concerns.
Thank you so much for bringing that forward. Is there any way for
I have
contact?
Kim's information. Kim, my name is Michelle. I'm the executive assistant. I will forward this to our team to send you a response.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, and I'm more than happy to talk with people directly involved in this construction project as well.
Thank you for bringing your concerns to the board. Much appreciated. Are there any other attendees who would like to speak during public comments? If so, please raise your hand. I believe that is everybody. So moving towards general announcements. So I have a couple of general announcements for the board. And any board members, if you have any general announcements, please raise your hand so I can call on you. The first announcement is Adam Lewis is offboarding. We thank him for his service. Unfortunately, he was not able to make the meeting today to tell you all himself. But you know, you can always reach out to him. The next announcement is that we're going to be reconfiguring culture, nature, and recreation with a new emphasis on people and nature. And it may be led by Ally. We're still working that out. The other announcement is that we have an opportunity for the racial equity training online through the city. If you would like to use an alternative email for this training, please send it to Michelle before the next board meeting, which is scheduled for October 8th. It is strongly encouraged that every board member complete the training as it aligns with Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland initiative. I will not be present at the next board meeting, and Ally will be chairing us. So thank you, Ally, for stepping up and quickly into this role as vice chair and chairing the meeting next in October. And then lastly, hopefully everybody received the PGE Harbingen Ad Hoc Committee's letter. We will be talking about that during the working group reports. So those are my announcements for you. If there are any other board members that would like to add to general announcements, please do so. And if there's any questions, oh, Sabrina, please go ahead.
Thank you. I don't think I've told the full board, but I'll be going on maternity leave at the end of November. So I will have an temporary acting executive director for Rosewood and have someone in my space. So Rosewood and East Portland will still be here, but I will be having sleepless nights for a few months.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. Any other announcements? Thank you so much, board. We're going to be moving to approving August meeting minutes. If you were not at the August meeting, please abstain. Do I have a motion to accept the August meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Matt. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second from Suen. Any discussion? Friendly amendment? Allison, go ahead.
I do have one thing just for note keeping. I don't think that I made it to the list of folks in attendance in the minutes from August, so just wanted to put that out there.
Friendly amendment?
But otherwise,
Wonderful. All those that are approving the meeting minutes with the friendly amendment of adding Allison as attending, please raise your hand if you are online or in person.
Erin will be abstaining since she was absent last week.
Anybody else abstaining? You're all good. Moving forward to the director's report with Director Long.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. I just have a few items I wanted to highlight. I hope that everyone got a chance to read the report, which is always chock full of good stuff. But I just wanted to elevate a few things. One, you may have heard about an initiative called One Water. Our Public Works partners, Bureau of Environmental Services, and the Portland Water Bureau have embarked on a 45-day exploratory phase for One Water. And that will explore how to integrate water, sewer, and stormwater services into a unified model. They've engaged a task force to lead this work, made up of the leadership teams of those two bureaus, along with a few representatives from the Bureau of Transportation, some financial folks, and the project management and consulting teams. Sheena Anderson, whom some of you might know, has been a co-project manager with Laura Lehman on our natural resource service delivery work. She is also in the space and serving as a conduit to the natural resource work that we've been engaged in. I've also been asked to serve as an observer, so I'm attending task force meetings as I can, but not actively engaging. So on Thursday of last week, we convened a meeting, including bureau directors and our respective deputy city administrators who've been engaged in the natural resources work, to talk about the potential nexus between natural resources and One Water, because obviously water is a natural resource. And so there's just general broad acknowledgement that there are likely synergies among and between the two efforts. And we'll just continue to be working closely to ensure that we identified any potential alignment. I'll also add that PP&R team members, Jen Cairo, Tanya Booker, Rachel Felice, and Laura Lehman have been interviewed also as a part of the process. They're bringing along our perspective and expertise through Parks into the process. The deliverable is due to the mayor on October 1st. It's an extremely fast turnaround. However, whatever the outcome, there is and will continue to be an opportunity to provide feedback. And I'll add the link to the chat when I'm through with my report, so folks can learn a little bit more about the effort. The next item I wanted to talk about was recreation registration and program planning. So as one of the ways to help fulfill our Parks Levy promises to the community, Portland Parks and Recreation launched the Partner Early Registration Pilot Program in the fall of 2022. The pilot was designed to help new users by giving them information, support, and time to set up accounts and sign up for discounts and register for activities. The pilot saw its biggest successes in supporting activity registration from ADA and language access accommodation, as well as growing a network of community organizations with strong reach to underrepresented communities, which we've prioritized. During the early registration pilot program, Recreation Management worked with staff, community members, and partners to solicit valuable input and engage in constructive dialogue about how the pilot was serving their needs. And through that feedback and collaboration, the Recreation is really excited to launch a new project called Project Connect. This is an initiative that will support how we continue to work with community groups and the public to help provide different ways to bring the community and services together. So it's the next iteration of the pilot program. I'm really just thrilled that the staff were able to bring together community partners and to really understand what did and didn't work, so we can do more of the stuff that worked and leave the stuff that didn't work in the dust. So community organizations can join the Recreation Services Community Network, request the Recreation Outreach team to attend a community event, and also learn more about the access discount, public information sessions, and ADA and language access accommodations. Recreation offered 3 public information sessions in early September to provide an opportunity for community members to learn how to access services. And planning is underway to take information about Project Connect and services out into the community this fall and winter. I know that we have recreation and environmental education coming to our next board meeting to provide an update on their summer programming and workforce recruitment for the season. And happy to ask Maximo to bring a team member to that meeting to give an overview and how things are going with Project Connect. And then the final item which was requested last meeting, that we highlight opportunities for the board to engage and attend meetings and events. I wanted to let folks know that on October 12th, Portland Arbor Day 2024 is happening at Glenfair Park. That's on Northeast 154th Avenue and Northeast Cooch Court. And the event goes from 8:30 until 2. But at 8:30, there's a yard tree giveaway, and that's for pre-registered folks, so you don't have to show up at 8:30. But from 10 to 12, there will be tree planting. And then from 12 to 2 is a general celebration. So there'll be community resource tables and art and games and food. The staff would like to invite folks to show off their individual style by wearing your best tree-themed outfit or accoutrement. So in the past, there have been baseball hats and tiaras made out of various tree debris. So yeah, again, I'll put the link in the chat for that event as well. And I hope you can come on out. I'll pause, see if anyone has any questions for me.
Or do you have the floor? I actually have a question.
Sure.
Regarding the Project Connect, I saw that there's gonna be expanding languages. Are these, like, is it being expanded to French, Creole, and Somali languages? Because we do have an African immigrant population that seems to be missing from the languages that are currently made available.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but Maximo's on the line. He might know. I do know that they're translating their materials into 22 languages. So there's quite a few. Maximo?
Yeah, I don't have the exact list in front of me, but for the language access, in addition to us doing translation for our printed materials, we're also providing language support for people who are needing translation assistance as they're going through the registration process as well. So we can bring some of those outlines of those steps and how that process works at the check-in that we'll be doing next month.
Wonderful. When I looked online, it looks like French and Creole, or French/Creole, is one of the top 10 languages, main languages spoken at home in Portland. And we got a really good turnout from that community last year when we were doing a focus group. So just want to make sure that we keep them in the loop when they start expanding the languages. Thank you. Any other questions? Board? Any additions, Dr. Mon? Go ahead.
On the topic of language, we'd like to know if it's possible to add, we have simplified Chinese characters for translation. May we also consider adding the traditional complex Chinese characters, just because there's a lot of population percentage are reading the text Chinese. It's usually hit the button and you can get it translated. I don't wanna make it too simple.
We don't do that.
I
We actually
know.
pay quite a
Yeah.
bit for our materials to be translated. But certainly we can add that to the list and see where, and we make decisions where we may translate in more languages for particular materials and particular events or programs, and then less for others, because 22 for like a sign is pretty outrageous. So we, and it also sometimes depends on where the events are taking place. So Maximo, take note of that as well, have a conversation, great.
Thank you.
Have additions, Director Wong?
I think that's it. I put the One Water link in the chat, and Michelle, I see put some information regarding Arbor Day as well.
Thank you so much, Director Wong. So we're gonna move towards the working group reports. The first one is Board Affairs Working Group. Casey, any additions or anything that you want to bring to the board's attention?
Yeah, the additional thing I would say is that if anybody wants a copy of the proposed revised chapter 3.27 of the Portland City Code, which governs us, I'd be happy to provide you with a copy. Just send me an email.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions from the board? Allison, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I guess this was in item 3 about the rec centers being used as emergency centers. The document that you shared, Dr. Corbin, compiling questions and concerns for the folks at Multnomah County. Someone had posed the same question that I had about whether the mayor's office had been contacted with our concerns, since the mayor seemed to be the person who ultimately made the decisions around whether, what venues are used. So I was just curious to know about that.
Casey, do you want to take it or should I?
Well, actually, I don't know, but the only thing I do know in partial answer to the question is that the mayor doesn't have the final authority in terms of what buildings get picked. But as to whether mayor office has been contacted, I'll have to defer to Director Long and her staff.
Yeah, I don't think we've explicitly shared it with the mayor. I mean, certainly Parks and Recreation has expressed our concerns internally with our colleagues in the past, although I think, as was indicated, sort of following that meeting, the county has not looked to parks as much recently. I would say for this past heat event. And we did not activate shelters, I think, in January. Yeah.
I was gonna say, just to add context, the discussion of emergency shelters has been going on since like 2022. So before your time, when we started, we did have some slides and a presentation and discussion with Portland Bureau for Emergency Management and one of the representatives from the mayor's office who works with the shelters on hand.
That's right, thank you.
So that was earlier this year, I would say February
Maybe
or so, or maybe even before the January storm.
that was after the gym.
It was after.
It was around there. and
Yeah,
then we were
yeah.
gonna
So
Bring them back.
yeah, so the Multnomah County was kind of like, you were speaking with Parks about the whole thing, then we went to PBEM, the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, and then we went to the county, and so it's been these like stepping stones, so to speak. And so that, just to give you some context as to why we didn't speak about the city as much in county discussion.
So they are in the loop. And I did notice that the recent cooling centers did not include rec centers. Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe the conversation that we did have at during the bag was that because we're gonna deal with a lot of changeover in the next couple of months, that the letter that we have, we can augment it, probably do an ad hoc group to augment it and then submit it when we actually have a city council that's gonna be present for at least 2 years.
Right, that makes sense.
Thank you so much.
No.
Matt.
Yeah, thanks. Could I get a clarification as to who does make that final call? Because I came away from that meeting with the understanding that the mayor did make that call too. So does anyone know?
Makes the call with regards to whether or not
Parks
a city.
facilities will be available.
Yes, so yeah, generally what happens is the county will make a request to the city. It's often directly to the director of the Bureau of Emergency Management, who if in the course of emergency is often delegated authority by the mayor. So in a matter of speaking, yes, the mayor is making that decision.
Is that clarification okay with you, Matt? Or do you have a follow-up? Moving to Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group, do we have a report in that you want to alert the board to? And I believe maybe Matt, you might be stepping in for David in his absence today.
Yeah, nothing to share, but if there are any questions, we can try to answer those questions.
Thank you, Matt. Any question from the board? Not seeing any questions. Moving to the Financial Sustainability Working Group. Oh, yeah, you can. Definitely.
With Dr. Corbin's encouragement, this is Swen. Would like to maybe bring an idea forward, specifically to get attention from the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. A few of us, specifically Dr. Corbin, myself, and Patty. Patty and I actually are more interested in seeing New Burnside Bridge that is more interesting, exciting, and of kind of iconic opportunity. And while reading the board material, the package, I recall that Dr. Corbin also mentioned about what about putting some plants or planting area on the bridge. And it got a very interesting kind of thinking going is while we are still at the so-called early design phase, concept phase, we can probably look into how we can maybe have a little bit of influence from the park side and looking at how this can truly be a green bridge and maybe opportunity to add planting vines. And if we even use Corten steel, that means we don't even have to do, when I say we, meaning the city won't even need to paint the bridge because Corten steel doesn't need to be painted. So we have example like Selwood Bridge and Solvay Island Bridge, beautiful Corten steel bridges. And if we can actually take advantage of these mega scale structure and then be able to add non-structural affected plants, vines, and they will create this more an iconic bridge that can put us onto the map, us meaning Portland, to truly have a green bridge where it will attract tourism, it will bring people down to Portland, which we really want them to be this important, walk across a bridge on a bridge that gives you shades and visual pleasantries. And so we thought, since we are Portland Parks, we want to think about plants. And here's an infrastructure that may be able to accommodate something that is going to be speak to Portlanders and also represent Portland to the outside world, that we find opportunities to add vegetation that is going to add value to our communities. So that's my my 2 cents here, representing a back and forth conversation we have on the sideline here. So I don't know if the Land Use and Infrastructure Group is able to take this on as a bullet point to think about whether or not we can have a discussion and perhaps put forward to inspire the others who are closer to decision making of where the bridge is going to go from here on.
Thank you, Celine. Any comments or questions from board members? Lauren.
Thanks, Fun, for that. I will say that the county is going to their board this Thursday to have them approve the design that they've been working on for 2.5 or 3 years. And so they're at that meeting, they're gonna be choosing between an arched bridge formation and a bridge more like the Tilcomb Bridge in style and design. So I think it's a little bit late to approach the, maybe not the materials as much as the plant idea. But we are gonna be working with the county further on, the designs of the access off the bridges and into East Bank Esplanade and also the park on the other side, on the west side. So we can mention it and see what comes of that.
Yeah, timing is always gonna be of an issue, but if they look at how much this can perhaps even save long-term maintenance of a bridge that needs to be repainted every so many years, maybe that is a long-term benefit to consider, maybe a change of material that can save money down the line. But I hear your reasoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. I want a clarification because last meeting, when we did bring up adding vegetation, I believe we were told that this was too soon.
Yeah.
It's too soon to talk
concept.
about that.
Not the.
And now it sounds like we're too late. And it's only been like 4 weeks. So is there any way of seeing where we are in the process where we can influence? Because I think one thing that I do want, specifically with the land use and infrastructure working group, a lot of it's capital projects. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to integrate green space, vegetation into design. And it would be really great to see when that opportunity to influence is there. Because it seems like we were too soon, now we're too late, and trying to coordinate what a timeline could look like would be very helpful. So it's up to the land use working group and individual board members if you want to go to the meeting and present or bring, what would you say? Provide testimony during the meeting to think about that.
And what were you thinking? It doesn't really make that much of a difference which structural expression the bridge is going to take on based on what's available as choices. Each of these design proposals are able to accommodate adding greeneries in a way that is not just a basket on a hook. And let's really put in a little bit more vision, imagination, and determination to make a bridge that really make a difference. And this is our opportunity. And if that means it adds a little bit more discussion, I think this is for future generations to look back and say how great it is that we have a green bridge. And if it just missed by 2 weeks, something happened between last meeting and today, maybe we can add 2 more weeks to make something on the discussion table.
Thank you, Sue-Ann. Matt.
Yeah, thanks. I will not be at the meeting, Land Use Infrastructure Working Group meeting this month, but I'll let David know about this conversation and see if he wants to take that forward. And I think what I maybe heard from Lauren was that the sort of the fundamental underlying design is being selected, but all the accoutrements, et cetera, that is very much still in play and is very much farther down the road. Okay, so we're not too late.
All right, so great, thank you, because that's what it was sounding like. Thank you for the clarification. Unless there's any other questions regarding, is that a legacy hand, Matthew? Wonderful. Moving to community engagement working group with Sabrina. Is there anything that you want to bring forward to the board's attention?
Tuesday week.
Oh, sorry. Financial Sustainable Working Group.
I authored the minutes, so I'm happy to defer all the questions to Claudio.
Any questions? Thank you, Casey and Claudio. Doesn't look like any questions from the board. Community Engagement Working Group, Sabrina, anything you want to bring the board's attention to? Or are there any questions from the board? All right, thank you so much. Moving to the PGE Harbiton Ad Hoc Working Group. Ali, I believe you're leading this discussion, and a letter was provided via email. So that is what we're going to be referring to during this time. Go ahead, Ali. Floor is
Yes,
yours.
the ad hoc Harborton project group did meet. That was me, Chris, Patty, Suen, and Matt, meeting with Laura and Adina, and talked about Parks's position, what would be most useful from the board at this time. And it was decided that a letter stating our position on not wanting Forest Park to lose 5 acres for this project when there are other viable options for where the transmission line could be replaced was what we wanted to do. It's in line with Parks. And it's in line with the board perspectives there. So we crafted a letter for you all to take a look that we'd like to get to City Council. It was determined at our meeting that the sooner we can get this to council, the better, and we can always do a follow-up letter if and when this project does move forward, but we've stated our case now and for that information to move on to new city council members as the new form of government takes hold. So first, did I miss anything else from other folks who were there or in the group? Okay. So we do have a letter. I think Casey had a proposed sentence to add. Casey, did you, and also, of course, discussion if folks want to talk about the letter or have questions about it or edits to make. I know Casey did.
You
The
want to
only-
bring forward a motion of what about voting on this as well. So keep that in mind when we're in discussion.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you for you and your group for the effort on the letter. That was a great letter. The only question I had was that I was looking for an ask of what we wanted from council. And I think there was a round robin of emails between you and me and Corbin, and I don't have Corbin's language in front of me, but Corbin suggested a sentence, and I hope you have that in front of you, Corbin, so you can read it, and then I would ask that the letter be amended before I make a motion to authorize.
Okay, I'm on my emails, so.
We'll see who can find it first, Corbin. I'm also.
I got it.
Oh, you got it. Great.
So the addition is we ask the city council to recognize the importance of Forest Park by protecting it and its resources and finding and supporting alternatives for creating a stronger, more modern power grid with the addition.
As stated by Corbin, the purpose of that is just to request city council basically deny the present proposal, but not to indicate that we deny the effort to improve our electrical system. And I think Corbin's sentence does a great job in combining both. At this point, I will be happy to make a letter to authorize Ali and Corbin to execute and provide the letter to city council with the timing that they see fit.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Patty. All those in favor of moving the motion forward, please raise your hand either virtually or in person. Any abstentions? Are those legacy hands? Any abstentions? Anybody against? Right, it looks like it passes.
Just a thank you to everybody on the ad hoc working group for such a quick turnaround. We did it in a couple days and it's, we worked on this last week and it's here now. So thank you to everybody, including staff, Laura and Adina, for making this happen.
And thank you, Ali, for putting the letter together in such a swift way. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the lead, Ali. And All right. Wonderful. So we're moving to Jessica Green with
Sorry,
Portland.
just to clarify, if you could send me a proposed edit that Casey added.
I'll send you an updated Word document with that sentence in there, Michelle.
Okay, and then I'll add it to letterhead and then send it to you guys to send to city council. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Jessica Green with Portland Parks Foundation. You are on.
Everybody. So I just want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who came out to the TKO Fest at George Park in August. Those of you who came saw a really incredible community event. The kids outside have been doing this. This was their third year. It was at George Park, one of our playground sites. And they also use it as an opportunity for getting kids ready for back to school in the neighborhood. They gave out over 450 backpacks filled with school supplies. They gave out 100 bikes with helmets, safety vests, lights. They also gave over 80 free haircuts, back to school haircuts, and had a food pantry there. It was a great program. It was just a really also great example. Yes, and it was a summer free for all event. Thank you, Director Long. And it's incredible to see the momentum that they have built over the last 3 years, and just all of the community advocacy that's going on up there in North Portland. Really excited that they will be helping lead the community engagement effort for the George Park design, which is kicking off. We are about to launch recruitment for the project advisory committee. And so George Park is kind of in full gear. It's a great partnership between the Parks Foundation, PPNR, and the kids outside. And then our other site, Raymond Park, the community survey just closed. So I think they're going back into collecting the feedback and seeing where that lands on some design options. And then Portland Heights Park is its own little interesting site with kind of layered complications of where and how the new playground can go. So that's a work in progress. And then kind of moving on to the Elk, as I mentioned last month, the Portland Water Bureau had selected a lead contractor, but it was still in kind of the process of whether anybody wanted to object. Nobody did. That's moving through. So they've confirmed Cedar Mill Construction with key subcontractors of Pioneer Waterproofing and Anderson Pool Works. Those of you who are familiar with any of those names might be excited about it. And then I guess noting too a prior conversation that we had in terms of just making sure that Parks is looped into the communication strategy of the next phase of the Elk. I am in conversation with the Water Bureau about putting together what that might look like. But as of right now, they're still just in contract confirmation mode. Which kind of leads me into just making sure that this is on your radar if you're interested in the monuments discussion. There is the Portland Monument Symposium that is October 11th, and I hate to say it, October 12th, since there's also the big Arbor Day event, but you could always attend one. But if you're interested in it, Converge 45 is hosting the first of a lot of public conversations around the city about monuments and their role in the city, many of which are located in parks. So I can drop the link here, but if you want to check out more about this event, I encourage you to. And also just kind of noting, so part of this is built on a momentum that Converge 45 launched in 2021. And within that phase, the Portland Parks Foundation partnered with them on a series of Green Dreams lectures. And if you haven't watched them, they're really interesting on spatial justice. They actually, 2 of them are recorded. So I'm also going to drop that link in the chat as well for the notes. But if you are interested in this conversation or attending the symposium, I also encourage you to check out these lectures. They're really incredible with some really national thinkers in spatial justice and use of public space. The Portland Parks Foundation is partnering with the city, similar to Converge 45, on a larger grant that the city received for these conversations. And so we are in conversation with the other partners that are part of this grant to be continuing this sort of conversation on public space and art in public space. I think the Portland Parks Foundation is still having conversations of what our role as a citywide parks nonprofit is within that space. Not necessarily so monument specific, but maybe more thinking broadly about public art and kind of continuing the conversations that started in 2021 on spatial justice. So that will be more 2025 programming, but this event on October 11th and 12th is kicking off a whole series of events that are being put on by partners. So stay tuned on that and check it out. If you're interested, go on the 11th and then go to Arbor Day on the 12th. And then let's see what else. So a couple other just like events that are coming up while we're on event dates. You've heard me say this, save the date, November 13th for our Fall Friends and Allies Summit. It's one day. As I noted, Allison Desir, author of Running While Black, is going to be our keynote speaker. And then we'll have 3 really great workshops in the afternoon. I will send over the descriptions because they're long, but to Michelle for the notes. Registration opens on the 15th. But since you probably love going to summits on parks things anyway, there's also the Intertwine Alliance, which is a regional partner, is hosting the Intertwine Alliance Summit on September 25th. So it's also just a really great place to continue to engage with partners who are all really dedicated to our parks and open spaces. So I'm putting a lot of links today in the chat since I didn't, like all of you, send my notes ahead of time. But I also encourage you to check out that event. Again, just like getting to know all these partners that are in the space. Let me find my link here. Maybe I don't have the link. Here it is. Yeah, and they're having 3 workshops: community engagement, houselessness in nature, and transportation justice. So, and it is out at the Hidden Creek Community Center in Hillsborough. So if you want a field trip, it's a great opportunity. And then our candidates forum, we've kind of pivoted because we realized that hosting 5 in-person debates is actually a lot for the number of candidates that there are. And so we are putting together a list of questions, kind of like doing more of a survey approach. And I'm going to follow up this group with our draft questions that we have, because I would love feedback from you. It'll be kind of a tight turnaround. But essentially what we're doing is a similar version of what we did back in 2020, but without the forum. And so asking each of the candidates to respond to 6 to 7 questions that are related to parks. And then compiling the answers and really organizing it by district and pushing this out and asking all of our partners to push it out to their members as well. Ideally, possibly getting some media to at least push it out and cover it. And just making sure that the issue really is in front of these candidates on parks. And that's where we're at right now on the candidates forums in terms of what makes the most sense now. And then thinking about, as soon as the election is done, like what's the advocacy role? And I think the Parks Board would be interesting conversation to getting in front of those who are elected in terms of making sure that parks is a priority issue from day one while they're there. And I'd love to continue to think about the strategy for that as well, because I know that you have also heard about all of these funding opportunities, and depending on when they get pushed onto any ballot, we probably want to be thinking about how we're approaching those who are elected ASAP.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the board? Before we go into questions really quickly, I just want to give a shout out to both Suen and Allison for coming out during the George Park activation, Kids Outside, Free for All event. Is that everybody? Is that, you know, the everything event, and wearing your I Love PDX Parks shirts. So thank you for coming out and showing up for the community. So I just want to put it out there. And they were giving away teachers' bags. If anybody knows about dry erase markers, they always dry out. So I was very happy to receive that package. I loved it. It was a great event. So thank you for coming together to support that community. Director Long.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment what Jessica said about the foundation and the board coming together to think about how to orient incoming council members and I'm gonna suggest that maybe that's a community engagement topic for that working group, and there's so much we still don't know, but the staff, we have to support whatever that looks like. I think it's really important. And it's more likely we'll get in front of them more quickly than I will.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Director Long. Thank you, Jessica. And it looks like we are moving. Are there any questions from the board before we move to our next agenda item, which is focused on Title 20 amendments? Seeing any hands? So moving to Title 20 amendments, and we have Victor Sanders.
Yes.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for having me. I'm gonna go ahead and share my
You
screen.
have the floor. I would say, make sure you go through your presentation and then ask for questions, or else you may not finish your presentation.
There we go. Perfect. All right. Can folks see that? All right. Yep, here we are. Great. I'm gonna make that full screen. For folks that don't know, Victor Sanders, Portland Parks and our Vibrant Communities team. Folks may recall I was here, may have been at least 6 or 7 months ago to talk about Title 20 updates. So Title 20 updates have been going on for a couple years. It started right at the tail end of COVID. And Title 20 is our code chapter in city code related to park rules. So it has a whole variety of old, antiquated city code elements around a whole variety of different things. So part of our work over the last couple of years has been to start to cull that and figure out what is still relevant, what is not relevant, and then just on a global scale, figure out how can we make this plain language and easy for people to understand. There's a lot of really strange language in there, and we even found some code that was contradicting the other code. So it's been kind of a fun project to start to pick apart. And we're at a phase now where we're here today to give you an update on kind of where we're at and our hope to bring this to council in October. So we'll go over some of those items and then open it up for questions there at the end.
If I can jump in really quickly
Yeah.
before you start, just to clarify how you would like the board to respond to this informational presentation.
Yeah.
And also, are there any opportunities for the board to contribute to the process?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a great point. So the question is, how would the board like to be involved? And what we'd like to do is just give you kind of a brief update today, share what that council document's going to look like so you can kind of see like what is the nitty-gritty in here. And then ideally have a concurrence from the board that yes, this is something that the Parks Board supports Parks doing in updating this code in order to better manage our park facilities.
And if I can just add, there was an ad hoc committee of the Parks Board that helped inform the work thus far. So it's certainly not the
myself, I believe.
Right. It's certainly not the first time many of you have gotten your eyes on this.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
unfortunately, it's taken a long time, like a lot of things in government, things take time, but there's a lot of reviews that we have to do, right? And so that's kind of how we got to this point. As I mentioned, we're looking to clarify the park rules, make them easier to understand, resolve outdated and conflicting language, address new and emerging technology and issues like drones and e-scooters. Folks have seen those in our parks and on our streets. adding new authority for the director to issue rules for those things, and then add new authority allowing the director to issue civil penalties in some cases. So how we got here is we did quite a bit of internal review with park staff in our natural areas, our land stewardship teams, as well as with our park rangers on rule enforcement challenges and opportunities. The park ranger program, which we'll talk about in a moment, has been integral to doing all of our park rule management and enforcement in parks. So it was key to get their input. And then we presented to this board at least a year ago and held some smaller working sessions with folks that were interested in certain pieces of the code language. So who enforces park rules? Park rules are performed, or rather I should say park rangers perform non-sworn park rule enforcement and education. 823-1637 is the park ranger number for folks that don't know. You can also call 311. That'll connect to the folks that are in the field, the park rangers that are in the field, as well as the supervisors that we have. Rangers are patrolling about 12,000 acres and 280 plus parks across the city, almost 24/7. In fiscal year 22-23, I didn't update this yet. We're just closing out that last fiscal year, but the numbers are almost similar, about 69,000 positive engagements. So when we talk about positive engagements, those are things like actually engaging with folks in parks in a positive way. It might be an opportunity to redirect someone that is doing a park ranger or a park rule violation. But we also not only do proactive engagement, we're also responsive. So rangers received over 4,200 calls for service in fiscal year 22-23. So that's folks that are actually calling that phone number for one of the park rule violations that you'd find in Title 20. They resolved nearly 21,000 park rule issues using voluntary compliance, including about 5,000 dog issues. When that doesn't work, the next tool in the tool belt is an exclusion or exclusion warning. That is a paperwork that restricts you from coming into a park for 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on the type of violation and if you've done it more than once. The park rangers also perform quite a bit of shelter referral work. At one point, we were one of the top agencies in the city that were doing shelter referrals, if you can believe it. In 22 and 23, it was nearly 2,900 shelter referrals. So a lot of really great work that's happening with that. So it's not all just about park rule enforcement, right? This is really to kind of help showcase that there's a lot of positive interactions that are happening in our parks related to park rules and park management. So like I mentioned, that tool and tool belt, the number one thing is generating voluntary compliance through education. So as part of this work, when we talked with the park rangers, some of what we wanted to look at in Title 20 was why. Why are these rules even here, right? Who created these? How did they get in here? Is there any history to what the management concerns were when these were created? And that's really when it comes back to voluntary compliance. Can we tell people, hey, here's the reason why this rule exists and why it's important that we follow it? If we can't answer that question, it becomes really difficult for someone to say, yeah, this is a rule that I should be following. Ejections and exclusions, as I mentioned, are that civil paperwork that is often issued. Sometimes folks don't comply and it has to be routed to Portland Police Bureau for a citation or an issue related to a serious crime or serious damage in a park. Of course, social service referrals and engaging other agencies is always an option. That's become really popular with Portland Street Response when we're coming at issues that might have a mental health component. And then finally, there's citations that can be issued, but the way current code is written, those can only be issued for dog violations and only after a written warning has already been provided. So that creates a little bit of a challenge for rangers when they're out in the field trying to do their work. So a couple of the largest proposed changes that are happening is one, our increased ability to issue civil penalties in some cases, including no longer requiring a written warning before issuing a citation for a dog off leash issue. It's probably one of the #1 calls we receive and one of the #1 issues we hear about from the community is around dogs off leash in areas where they're not permitted. There'll also be the flexibility for the director to issue rules related to electric scooters. Those are the e-scooters and bicycles in parks. As the code is currently written, we have a blanket prohibition on e-bikes in parks, and electric scooters, hoverboards, one wheels, those kind of fall into this really strange gray area where the rules really aren't clear. And so this provides some rulemaking opportunity for us to allow the director to respond to changing environments, or rather I should say, respond to changing technology, right? There's always something new that's coming out. I just saw a recent Instagram advertisement for electronic roller shoes, You're probably gonna see it in your feed if you're on Instagram. It's people that have little wheels on their shoes, so you wouldn't even know a person's wearing them, right? But they're cruising along. So similar to Portland Bureau of Transportation, they've moved that authority, so it's outside of code and allows the director to convene working groups to help develop those types of rules and policies in a way that takes it, has the ability for us to respond more nimbly to these new kind of emerging technologies. There's also smaller things, like I mentioned, plain language, just around the behaviors that we're looking at, right? If we say no skateboarding, that doesn't really actually get to what we're saying. We're talking about grinding on, if you're grinding on a piece of park amenity, or you're launching off of, a park amenity, that's kind of the behavior we're talking about, right? It's not really about the tool in all cases. Also talking about, or I should say, we've also added language just around, aquatic life and people releasing animals in parks and things like that. So there's a lot of these little micro changes that are happening that are coming to us recommended from our lands management and our ranger teams. Some of the higher level issues we talked about, or that we're including here, that I'll talk about. If a permit is denied, right now that applicant must appeal that actually to city council. So you get to set up a date and a time. How bizarre is that, right? It's something out of small town America. It's really not appropriate for the way that a large city would do business. So if a permit is denied, it would be appealed to the director in the future. That's often how that is. The second is allowing the use of grills or stoves in areas designated by the director. Right now, our code is silent on this issue, and so this would provide clarity that the director could issue rules allowing, this is barbecues, the technical term being a grill or a stove in areas designated by the director. Also clarifying that fireworks are prohibited in all parks. There's some code that doesn't really reconcile with the rest of the city code on fireworks. Clarify that smoking does include vaping. Prohibit the abandonment of vehicles and boats in parks. Clean up our animal section to clarify that livestock must also be leashed. This is a very Portland problem. If you've heard of like the llama that comes out that you can hug, and there's people with pigs and horses. So that's just really clarifying that all animals created equal. Prohibit the takeoff and landing of drones. Again, code wasn't created when drones were really a thing. Senate Bill 812 was recently passed at this Oregon State Legislature, and that provided some clarity for how local governments should handle drones. And so we included that language, which essentially prohibits the takeoff and landing of drones in parks. And then updating the prohibition related to wheeled devices, as I just mentioned. So in the future, if the code is accepted by council, or rather I should say adopted by council, park rules become clearer, easy to understand. We hopefully improve overall compliance. Electric assisted scooters and bikes would be regulated in parks with a time, place, manner restriction as imposed by the director. Increased civil penalty citations could occur to people that violate dog off leash or scoop laws, and civil penalties could also be issued for other violations for things like dumping or commercial vending in parks if folks don't have a permit, or construction activity that occurs in parks without a permit. So as I mentioned, we're looking to bring this to council in October. If approved, there'll be some finalized rulemaking that would need to occur that the director could implement probably in early January. With the government transition, there's also a variety of other code changes that are happening at the with the government transition team. And so we're trying to get these all kind of consolidated within the next couple of months. And those are kind of micro, again, plain language amendments that are happening related to antiquated language that really won't make sense anymore after January 1st. So I will open it up there for any questions that folks might have.
Board, the floor is open. Keep in mind, we have about 5 minutes before our next agenda item, which starts at 6:10. Please put your cards up or raise your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you for presentation. There's one slide talking about how many cases park rangers will answer and all that.
Yeah.
How many park rangers do we have?
Yeah.
And because I had the pleasure to talk to 2 in the past few months. Very nice, very pleasant, but it's just one person. They're like, I don't know, 2 during the night, or
right.
It was just unbelievable in terms of the amount of work that needs to be done with so few rangers. Really impressed. And then the second question is, how are we doing with cultural diversity within the team,
Mhm.
park rangers?
Yeah, so great questions. So the total number of park rangers that we have, it fluctuates by season. So there's a seasonality that happens to it. I believe right now we're authorized for 30 full-time park rangers, and I think they are all filled. If Vicente or Sophia were here, they'd be able to give a definitive answer, but I believe it's about 30 full-time. And then it goes up to 50 in the summer months. So that's kind of around April through September or October. And then those seasonals leave, and oftentimes they will come back at the next season. And you're right, it's nearly 24/7 with only 30 full-time employees in the winter and 50 in the peak season. You don't get the coverage that you need, and so a number of those calls may go unanswered that folks have, and then you have to prioritize the calls you're going to, right? There's some real livability and problems in parks that we can't always get to, but it's appropriate for a park ranger to respond, and it may not be appropriate for police to respond, right? There's kind of this area that happens of, is it something that's criminal is happening that I need to respond to? Is it really kind of a code violation that is most appropriate? So I think as the city starts to look at our public safety response and a new form of government, the park rangers definitely have a role to play, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out as we continue to look at the future of public safety in Portland. And to the question of diversity, I will say that safety and security team at parks is probably one of the more diverse teams, along with recreation within the city, really. When you look at the overall metrics and numbers on the reports of who's on those teams, that is something that I know Vicente has been really careful, and Sophia, in crafting a team that really reflects the community that they're serving, and the community that we want to make sure that we're supporting when we're doing any type of rule enforcement in a park.
Just a little bit of follow-up, park rangers are conveniently the kind of face of parks.
For sure.
And they are playing the role as ambassador. And their mannerism toward community members, and also in difficult situations, it's challenging. And I'm hoping that we can expand the size of the crew, so that we have more presence.
For sure.
We have many parks, issues that we have to take care of that's coming outside of the park. And I don't know if we are going to add more staff or not, but it just seems like we should.
Mhm.
And it would be great to have buddy systems, but that's asking a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you, Sue-Ann. Ally, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Correct me if I'm not remembering properly, but in the last budget cycle, the Rangers program was cut, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And Parks was making the argument that it should be seen as an emergency service where it's not seen as emergency infrastructure for the city. How is the staffing of the program? Does it need more funding in the future? And is there still a push from Parks to have Rangers be recognized as a part of sort of a broader emergency services infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think, yes, there's always space to add more park ambassador faces and response to community concerns. We're not yet in this next budget cycle, but I think it will be something that definitely comes up. It's consistently one of the top rated things you're hearing from the community is an interest in, feeling safe, and park rangers definitely play that role when it comes to parks. So I don't have an answer for you on kind of what that number looks like in the future, kind of where that lies in this next budget cycle, but I know it'll definitely be a part of those budget conversations that do come up.
I see just a note from Casey. Yeah. Oh, so just want to bring this up from Casey. There's a link where the board members can review the presently proposed amendments to Title 11. Can you provide that link to the board? And then if I can, I guess get our time a little tight, I have two questions for you. The first one is, do these rules encompass PP in our properties or just park and recreation facilities?
Yes. great question. So it involves any property that Parks has a management responsibility for. So it may include like a BES property that Parks also manages. And there's some language that I believe is going to be tweaked on the definition of Parks facility in order to help encompass that. Yeah.
And my second question, is there language that distinguishes between e-scooters, what we consider like recreational vehicles or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
them, versus mobility devices?
For sure. Yeah. So that is one of those, that's one of those pieces that we hope to articulate in the administrative rule, knowing that we may have to go back and finesse it out, is the difference between mobility device and an e-scooter. Yeah. So you're hitting on something that once you start peeling back that onion, it starts to get very, it's great exercise to have to do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any last minute questions from the board?
So I will share with this group, I will share with Michelle to send some documents folks can look at, and then we'll look at getting any comments back to me, and we'll let you know what the next steps end up being.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you all.
Moving to our next item is Title 11 Large Tree Gap Amendment. It looks like we have Brian, is it Landon? Landau, thank
But
you.
I think it's just, I
And
think it's
Jen
Jen
Harrow.
Harrow.
You have the floor. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jen Cairo. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the city forester. Brian Lando won't be joining us tonight. You got me. And thanks to Michelle for running the PowerPoint, which I believe was in your packet. So I am presenting you information today for your edification and use about an amendment to Title 11 trees that we, Parks and Recreation Urban Forestry, are going to be proposing to council in October. And a role that you all could play, aside from hearing this information, taking it in and considering it, is you may want to. Yeah. Yes.
You want to take off your video? Your sound is very garbled.
Okay. How's that? Is that any better?
Yeah.
Hello?
It might actually be our end because it's.
I have
Yes,
full
really
boxes
slow.
Jen, I
Yeah.
can hear you just fine, so it might be a different issue. Can other folks who are online hear?
Yeah, it sounded fine for me.
Fine here, yeah.
Fine here as well.
Okay, I think it could possibly resolve itself, but what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna turn off cameras on our end. See if that helps. Can folks hear okay without any slowness? Is that
Sounds
better?
good.
Okay, great, awesome.
How
Jen?
about, can you hear me? Those of
Yep.
you in the room?
Sounds good.
How about those? in the room?
It doesn't sound great for us in the conference room. It's garbly.
I don't know what to tell you. I've got full bars.
It might be us, but you know what? It's getting better. So let's go ahead and
Yeah.
move forward.
Okay, I will try to yell in case that helps. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is for your information and potentially also if the Parks Board wants to make a recommendation to City Council on this proposed amendment, that you have an opportunity to do that as well. We call this the Large Tree Amendment. Next slide, please, Michelle. Under current Title 11 Tree Code language, this large tree amendment provision will expire at the end of 2024, specifically on December 31st. Staff's recommendation to council is to remove that expiration date, that sunset clause, to make the provision a permanent part of the tree code. At the same time, Urban Forestry is midway through a multi-year project to update Title 11 trees. We're currently updating the Portland Urban Forest Plan, which you have heard about in previous meetings and will again. And we expect to bring that plan to City Council in spring 2025. Following the adoption of the plan, will undertake a larger Title 11 amendment project to align the tree code with the updated vision goals and canopy targets in the new Portland Urban Forest Plan. The amendment project at that time is a real opportunity to take a look at tree preservation and mitigation in a more holistic way. So right now we're focused on addressing an expiration date, a sunset clause in the tree code. Next slide, please. As an overview of our process, following the joint public hearing of the Planning Commission and the Urban Forestry Commission, they each held separate work sessions and unanimously approved the staff recommendation to remove this sunset clause from the large tree amendment. This would make the large tree amendment provision of code a permanent feature of the tree code. And according to Title 11 trees, the process for bringing substantive amendments to City Council is a pathway through the Planning Commission and Urban Forestry Commission. Their input is required to be obtained and expressed to City Council. The Forestry Commission and Planning Commission have finalized their recommendation statements, and they will be submitting them to City Council. We are planning on an October 2nd council date for the hearing of the proposed amendment. Next slide. At the July 24th joint public hearing, around 60 in-person and written comments were received about the proposed amendment, with the vast majority in support of continuing the large tree amendment policy, in other words, removing the expiration date. This included statements from organizations like 350 PDX, Portland Neighbors Welcome, East Multnomah County Soil and Water Conservation District. We did hear one in-person comment opposed, and that was from Fish Construction, which is a local development company. Next slide. This slide shows what the large tree amendment changed about Title 11 trees' tree preservation requirements. Prior to the large tree amendment, just 1/3 of trees that are 12 inches or larger had to be preserved on a private property in a development situation, or a fee in lieu paid. The fee for not preserving those trees was $1,200 per tree, regardless of size, whether it was 13 inches diameter breast height, about the size of a dinner plate, or 80 inches diameter breast height, which it would take 4 or 5 of us with our arms outspread to encircle. With the large tree amendment, 1/3 of trees between 12 inches and 20 inches need to be preserved. What changed with the large tree amendment is now all trees 20 inches or larger are expected to be preserved, but if the developer chooses not to, the fee in lieu is $450 per diameter inch. So starting at $9,000 for a 20-inch tree, and it increases from there based on the size of that tree. Please note that while the fee for removing a smaller tree increased from $1,200 to $800, that was not due to the large tree amendment. That fee is set through a routine annual fee setting process. It's part of all of the Infrastructure Bureau's updates with City Council, recommended to Council for them to approve to the fee schedules. Next slide, please.
Jen, I'm gonna pause for a moment. We are still having a little bit of garbling, and I wonder if it's because I'm sharing the PowerPoint from this computer. So I'm gonna share from my laptop, and I'm hoping that solves any kind of issues. So just bear with me one moment.
Too much going on.
Okay.
Apparently this computer can't handle both things for some reason. So, share on my laptop, and hopefully that will solve that problem. Okay. I think we'll probably be able to hear you better.
Okay. Just please interrupt if I need to stop for changes.
You sound great.
Good. Should I go over that last slide again? Was that clear enough?
No, I think it was clear. It was clear enough.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this slide, there are numerous exemptions to those mitigation and preservation requirements for private property trees in development situations. For example, dead, dying, dangerous, and nuisance species trees are exempt from all the requirements. Also, affordable housing projects are exempt from the tree retention or fee in lieu requirements. And then importantly, lots under 5,000 square feet and projects, development projects on private property with proposed or existing 85% or more lot coverage are also exempt. Those last two provisions encompass 79% of the residential unit capacity in the city's buildable lands inventory. In other words, almost 80% of the land planned for building up in Portland is already exempt from this retention or payment provision that we are seeking to have extended. The large tree amendment is targeted preservation and mitigation strategy for Portland's largest and most valuable trees outside of areas where most of Portland's housing is and will be built. Next slide, please. So this is more detail on those exemptions. This is a map showing all of the lots which are eligible to meet Title 11 exemptions. So this provision doesn't apply to them. In red are lots under 5,000 square feet, which are by right exempt from Title 11 development requirements, like the large tree amendment. 10% of Portland's future housing capacity is on these lots that are less than 5,000 square feet. In blue are lots with zoning, which allow for 85% or greater lot coverage. 69% of Portland's future housing capacity is on these lots. The exemption is here not by right. Developers need to take advantage of the available allowable lot cover of 85% or more in order to be exempt from Title 11 tree preservation requirements in development. But taken together, these two elements account for 80% of Portland's future housing potential that are already exempt from this provision we're seeking to retain. Next slide, please. The large tree amendment has been effective at preserving trees in development. From 2017 to 2020, an average of 365 trees 20 inches diameter or greater were removed per year. From 2021 to 2023, when the size threshold was lowered to 20 inches, that number dropped by 68% to 114 trees per year. While this time period coincided with an overall drop in development activity during COVID, many development projects were still in the pipeline. They had started prior to that downturn. This increase in preservation occurred without negatively impacting the production of new housing. So in spite of saving more trees, new housing was not reduced as a result of this provision. Only 62 housing projects, which is less than 3%, paid a fee under the large tree amendment during that time period. And that's consistent with an economic analysis provided by a private consultant, Johnson Economics, in 2020, which projected that just fewer than 54 housing units would be built over 20 years under the large tree amendment policy. So over a 20-year span with this provision in place, only 54 fewer housing units. That's a reduction of just 0.06% of all housing growth projected during the 20-year period. And so, you know, a housing unit is defined as a structure, for example, a single family home, or part of a structure, for example, a single apartment within an apartment building that is occupied by a single household. So a duplex would be 2 housing units, a 20-unit apartment would be 20 housing units, et cetera. Next slide, please. And finally, here you see the code language for the staff recommendation. It would simply remove the December 31st, 2024 language and make permanent the current Title 11 tree preservation and mitigation requirements that apply in private property development situations. And the last slide. The council hearing is currently scheduled for October 2nd at 2 p.m. Notices have been posted in the Oregonian and Daily Journal of Commerce as per requirements. Per Title 11 requirements, notices will also be sent to those who testified at the Joint Planning and Urban Forestry Commission's hearings, either in person or in writing, or those who requested such notice 2 weeks before the council hearing. And once city council agenda is posted, that's typically a week before the hearing. Those wishing to provide comment can either sign up to provide comment in person or submit written comment statements through the council clerk website. And if the Parks Board would like to submit a written comment, we can submit it on their behalf as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. The floor is open to the board. Please raise your hand if you're here via Zoom, or put your name card to the side, be called on.
Jen, I'm gonna say that you've probably explained it so well. No one has any questions. Oh, wait, I spoke too soon.
Casey.
No, it's not a question, it's a motion. I can wait.
I do have a question. Of course I do. But Casey, did you want to put a motion forward?
Well, I'd move that the board provide the authority to chair and vice chair to submit a letter in support of the amendments to city council.
I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Those who are in favor, please either raise your hands virtually or in person. Everybody? Anybody abstaining? Anybody voting against? It looks like we're moving forward with that. Thank you so much for that, Casey. I do have a question regarding the lots under 5,000 square feet, which seems like the lion's share of most folks are going to be exempt from the situation. How are you, as urban forestry, weighing the tree removal on these smaller lots, and then also thinking about tree planting at the same time? Is there a process, like if you take down one big tree, that maybe 3 smaller ones show up? Like I'm just curious about the process.
Yeah, good question, Dr. Corbin. Just to be super clear, this provision is only when a property is under development, and we have separate code and regulations for when private properties, 5,000 square feet smaller or higher, are not in a development situation about tree removal. And when these exempt lots, the 5,000 square foot lots, which comprise 10% of Portland's future housing capacity, so that is a small proportion of the buildable land inventory. Nevertheless, they are exempt from all the provisions of this part of the code. So we don't have a role in whether trees are planted on those lots or not. And they are not required to retain or pay the fee in lieu for the trees that are 20 inches diameter, breast height or larger.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Jen, thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. We look forward to seeing your letter. Thanks.
Thank you. Allie, we have our work cut out for us. We have about 15 minutes before public comment, which we do have to wait on. So I'm gonna open the floor to the board if there's maybe have general announcements or anything the board members want to bring forward for discussion. And raise your hand, or if you're online, or put your card to the side if you want to broach a topic. Sabrina, please go ahead. Thank you so much.
I just had a question, kind of been lingering in the back of my mind about, do we know how we're gonna be engaging with, vibrant communities? I know that the equity team went to vibrant communities, and then I believe the community, I don't know their full title, but their community engagement team went to vibrant communities. Are we still engaging with those teams as we did when they were parks, or is there a difference? I just know I noticed one of our presenters had the vibrant communities, so just curious.
Yeah, no, that's it's a good question. So we are still vibrant communities, right? There's just this overarching service area that encompasses parks, arts and culture, and the children's levy. And what happened was Todd's previous role as Deputy Director of Operations and Strategies, everything that was in his portfolio now provides the same services that they had to Portland Parks and Recreation to those other two offices as well. It's two very small offices, but so they've been rebranded as Vibrant Communities Support Services. So that's why you'll hear and see those names sort of interchange. I think the way I've tried to explain it to many, oh, look at that. The way I've tried to explain it to many staff is that we, Portland Parks and Recreation, are still 90% of the client to Vibrant Communities. So so they are providing the same services they provided for parks now to the children's levy and to arts and culture. So you're right. But community engagement we'll be doing community engagement for the entire service area. But we will, just because of our sheer size, they will, we'll be their largest client, I guess is the best way to say it.
Okay, so I know that at least in the community engagement working group, we had previously talked to Melody when she was like in the interim position, just about hearing from the equity team on some of their work. So we're still kind of within our purview to get them on the agenda at some point to talk about their work.
Well, actually, I since we have the time and she's on the line, maybe Amanda could come off camera. We were hoping to invite Amanda to our next board meeting to introduce her. But Amanda is our new equity manager. There she is. And I'll just say, Sabrina, so we are going through a bit of a transition with the equity and inclusion team. I'll be sending an email to the board shortly about that transition. But Amanda can, if you could just introduce yourself and give a little bit of background, since we have time.
That sounds great. I'm glad I stayed on for public comment. Thank you. This is my first PPNR board meeting, so it's nice to meet folks. My name is Amanda Manjarres, she, her pronouns. I'm the new equity and inclusion manager for Vibrant Communities, and started at the end of July. So I'm sort of in that initial period of continuing to assess and learn about the different programs and services, not just in Parks and Recreation, but also within arts and culture and the children's levy. And have been in a process of having conversation also with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, Office of Equity and Human Rights, to think more about streamlining program and services as we're thinking about the full-scale transition into the new form of government. So a lot of changes are taking place, but really our strategy at this point is to build a foundation that serves the entire service area and can think about how we're streamlining supports and services to make sure that we're building on existing projects and foundations and thinking about the form, follow, function for that. So we're going through a lot of transition, and we'll be announcing more of the details soon, but I will start attending these particular meetings more regularly and happy to answer questions moving forward. But yes, as we continue to roll that process out, I'm happy to have conversations with folks about some of the details. Nice to meet everybody. It's been a really riveting meeting. I've learned a lot about the different amendments.
Thank you and welcome. Opening up the floor to the board. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Right, what is this one? Sue Lynn, go ahead.
I'm going, maybe just wanna have a little clarification on an earlier topic. If the schedule works out, I would like to go to the county, commissioner meeting. I just wanna know, are there others from the board who's interested in, coming together? And also, what is kind of representation me coming, if I go by myself, what is my identity as I sit there? What am I supposed to represent? My own view, or is there a collective interest to have some message? And would the chair like to be there? Since it's really your idea.
You keep on putting it back on me, which I'm fine with. If we're going to speak in a unified voice as a board, we need to vote on what needs to be said and make sure the board supports it. We can always show up as individuals who are part of the Portland Parks and Recreation Board and air our concerns. So those are the two ways of looking at it. The question is, is this the time to show up for this particular thing in this particular way? Or should we get a better timeline and then figure out how to best move forward in the process? Because Ally just completed a letter. Ally and I have a letter to do, but also this is also important. And the question is, do we take this back? If I'm understanding where this is coming from, is the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group.
It goes back to Lauren's comment about timing. If by the time we actually decide to clarify the message, is that going to be way too late and there's absolutely, what's the point moment?
And I think, everybody feel free to jump in. The first thing would actually find out what is the timeline. And then so I would throw it back to the Land Use Infrastructure Working Group and staff there to find out what the timeline is and seeing what a draft could look like for the next meeting, which you haven't had a meeting yet this month. There's one in like a week or two, is that correct? If I remember correctly. Like the third Thursday or something like that. So there's still time to act. The question is act how and at what time, for what purpose. So that's what I'll throw it back to the group to make that decision. And this is something that Matt is going to be communicating to David, who sets the agenda with staff folks for the next Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group meeting. So thoughts, prayers. Matt, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think what I was hearing from park staff was that we're very early in the process of thinking about things like landscaping and that there's ample time to do that. So I think for me, it would make sense to learn more about that timing and that process and provide those comments probably later and not try to rush into that.
Maybe putting it on the Land Use Infrastructure agenda to find out what the timeline is. And then Director Long.
I have seen and heard folks who've testified at other meetings state that, their name, their occupation, their interest, and then state, I serve on the Portland Parks and Recreation Board, but I'm here in my own capacity. So you make it known that you have that affiliation, but you're not speaking on behalf of the board. So I think that that's a way for you to share your personal opinion or thoughts without it being a decision or like agreed upon stance. So that's one way you could go about doing it. And I think that they appreciate knowing that there are stakeholders out there from these various community groups that are showing up, and not just like, you know, just neighbors, but like people who have expertise, right? And have actually built things. So I think that's a way you could do it. And then the other thing I was gonna say in terms of timing, like, I don't even think they have enough money to build this bridge, so I really wouldn't worry too much about the timing. It's just my personal.
And then do I, if I get to sit there on Thursday, do I mention any of our kind of
I think you can say that that the board's received a briefing from the county on the bridge, that we have a land use and infrastructure working group who's very interested in following the project very closely. I mean, none of those are opinions, right? That's just facts, and it shows that there's an interest and that there might be some follow-up. I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels, but just.
And they're voting on a concept design.
Right.
And then it may not even look.
But they're voting basically what they like, not necessarily what was voted by the public. So.
Well, right.
But I think there's an opportunity to put a vision out there as they're thinking about it or planning to see if we wanna go down that route and see what that means as far as that.
Oh, there's Lauren.
Oh, sorry, I'm Lauren.
A couple of suggestions, actually. Patty Tillett's on the design committee for the Burnside Bridge. So it might be good to, since he's participating in every meeting that they're doing about the design, it might be good to loop him into your comments. I can do that. I actually just sent your comments to the Burnside Bridge county people that we met with this week. But it might be good to loop Patty in too. That's just a suggestion that you might want to do.
Lauren, I think that we have enough new people that folks may not know Patty Tillett.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Patty was, he is a principal at ZGF Architecture, and he was on this Parks Board for years. I don't know, what, 6 years or something? Yeah.
Yeah, really long time. And he chaired the land use.
Oh, yeah, he's been around forever.
So there's a connection there.
I mean, and then
And he's strongly advocating for us, for the two connections down to the Esplanade and to the park on the other side. Also, so I can loop in your comments to him if that's helpful, but Sven, if you want to communicate with him as well, that's I can send
that
you
will be much appreciated. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and let me know whatever support you want from me, because you know I can do the sci-fi visioning for days. Thank you for that, Patty. Go ahead.
a new topic. We're done with that.
Yes.
It'd be nice to have an update on the pool. It's been, it's been a while to see where they're at, and
The North Portland Aquatic Center.
so we could get that.
Look as an update during the board meeting, so put that on our agenda setting meeting. Because I was looking at the director's report, I'm like, what size did they pick? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
I don't remember.
Rumor has it's kind of pushed out, so it'd be interesting to see.
Thank you for that. We have 1 minute before we have community comment.
It is time.
It's time for community comment. Anybody online for community comment? Anybody in person? All right, that seems like that's concluding community comment. And then lastly, are there any, the floor is still open to the board. Any comments, questions?
I just put in the chat the latest update from the project website of North Portland Aquatic Center that was updated in July. Just essentially that they've chosen an architecture firm to design.
Yeah, there's not much to report.
Well, right, that's right. But
it's good to know that.
Or, what's the next step? Are we on a pause?
No.
I I believe if once there is more community engagement events scheduled, which I think has been kind of on pause for a second, but once that's scheduled, we will let you know.
Lauren, do you have anything to add?
No, other than what Michelle just said, we did hire the architecture firm, so we're just starting the process up now.
Negotiating that contract. Yeah.
And checking messages really quickly. All right, I'm putting a motion for us to conclude or adjourn the board meeting at 6:47, which is about a minute. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those who are in favor, please raise your hand virtually or in person. Anybody abstaining? Anybody against? All right, thank you so much, board members. We are concluding at 6:47 p.m.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.